Well, hey everybody, thanks for joining us here again for another video devotional. I want to show you something that if I was still a kid, I kind of am at heart sometimes, but if I was still a kid and I was checking off things that I wanted for Christmas this year, Lego would still be at the top of my list. My boys love Lego. They kind of go through phases where they play with it, sometimes more than others, but for the most part, it's something that they're excited to get new sets of, even though they have more than I care to admit. But one set that Braden has been working on lately is this one here, and I don't know if you're going to really be able to see what that is. If you're a car guy, you'll understand how cool it is that Lego is making a 1970 Dodge Charger RT model that actually, it looks pretty legitimate, right? Like, it's pretty cool. Braden's really excited about this set, and I am too, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. But at the same point in time, even though it's a neat set, and even though it's fairly accurate to look at as compared to the real thing, you would be very futile to think that you could build that, climb in it, and go win a drag race with it, right? That would just be silly. When it comes right down to it, to say that this little piece of plastic that has nothing lifelike about it whatsoever that could actually be used in place of a real car. No, if you wanted to go and drag race or drive down the street, you would have to buy an actual real life 1970 Dodge Charger, which I unfortunately do not have in the parking lot here to show you, but you get what I'm saying, right? There's a futility in expecting that a model and something that you build following these instructions will be lifelike. It might be cool, it might be neat to look at, but it is not going to be the real thing by any stretch of the imagination. Right at the end of Habakkuk chapter 2, Habakkuk lays out, I guess the Lord rather, lays out through Habakkuk one last woe before we move into chapter 3 and we see Habakkuk's response to everything that the Lord has been laying out. And this woe focuses on the worship of idols. And before he even gets to the woe, the Lord lays out the futility of trusting in idols. It's something that man created. Right? The idols that are being talked about here, the ones being described, are things that are made of wood and overlaid with silver and gold, and they might have been magnificent to look at, and they might have been beautiful acts of craftsmanship, but they were just that. They were acts of craftsmanship. If you want an even more descriptive picture, you go to the book of Isaiah. I believe it's in Isaiah chapter 9. Don't quote me on that. I'll find the reference. I'll put it in the description below, but that gives an even more descriptive sense of how futile it is to trust in an idol that's been carved out of a piece of wood. Isaiah talks about, it's you can go into the woods, you chop down a tree, you use part of it to build a fire to keep warm, you use part of it to cook your supper on, and you carve an idol out of the rest of it and you worship it. And when you really stop and think about it, something that is made by our own hands is not something that has any ability to save us, right? There's no life in it, there's no breath in it. It is just an image, and that's all it is. And the Lord wants his people, but also the Babylonians, to understand just how futile it is to trust in that thing that you created. There's no breath in it. There's no life in it. You can say to it, awake, and expect it to answer you, but it will not do it because it is just that. It's an idol. It's something that you've come up with. It can sometimes be easy, I think, to read passages like this and assume that, okay, well, we don't worship idols in that sense, and so how does this actually apply to us? But think about it for a second. How easy it is to trust in things that are either our own creation, things that we have control over, or we think we have control over, things that we can see and touch here on earth, rather than putting our trust in God. Money, savings, health is a big one. And I think the whole COVID thing has kind of maybe shone some light on how much of an idol we make out of our own health, in the sense that, we're sort of guaranteed a certain amount of time here on this earth. I don't want to take this flippantly, but the whole COVID thing has reminded us of just how mortal we really are, and how susceptible we are to things that are completely outside of our control. And whereas we might have thought, if we eat right and exercise and all that, yeah, something might happen, but we're probably guaranteed a certain amount of years on this earth. And this has just been another thing that has come and shown us, actually, no, there's very little of that that's in our control whatsoever, and it becomes an idol in that sense. And so we may not worship idols in the sense of a block of wood covered in silver and gold, but there's still things that we trust in. There's still things that we fall back on. There's still things that we value that we wouldn't really want to live life without, or we would struggle to live life without, and those become idols. And as Habakkuk chapter 2 comes to an end, the Lord wants the Babylonians to understand they're worshiping something futile, but he also wants his people to understand that when you place your faith in something that is not the Lord of the universe, you are placing your faith in something that is futile. It cannot save. As this ends, the Lord gives a picture, and the picture that he gives of himself here really does drive and affect how Habakkuk responds in the final chapter, which we'll get into next week. The picture is of God in his holy temple. He says, "The Lord is in his holy temple, let all the earth be silent before him." All of these other things and ways that people try to gain security and trust in and expect to save them and to help them in those times of need, those things will be proven futile. They're not going to save. They're not going to come through with them when it comes right down to it. But there is one who will, and that is the Lord. The Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth be silent before him. There's a reverence that comes when we understand the one that we worship, the one who created us, is the one who actually has the ability to save and the ability to provide us the peace we need and help us through whatever it is we're facing in this life. Worshiping idols, worshiping these things that are made by our own hands or that we place more trust in than we should, are futile. That doesn't mean we don't care about our health. It doesn't mean that we don't, that we're not wise with our money and build up savings. No, those things are fine. But if we're ultimately trusting in those things to save us, to give us peace and comfort and security and come through when we need it most, we will be let down and we will see the futility of that. Faith placed in the one who created us, in the one who saved us, and the one who walks with us and teaches us and gives us what we need on a day-to-day basis, that is the absolute opposite of futility. And that is absolutely where we find what we need to get us through our lives, whatever it is that we're facing. Next week, as we get into Habakkuk 3, we're going to see the effect that this conversation with God has had on Habakkuk, and we're going to get a different tone from Habakkuk than we've seen earlier on. There's something we can learn from that as well. But for today, be encouraged that we serve and worship a living God, a true God, one that we don't have to say awake and cross our fingers and hope that this lump of stone or wood or whatever will come to life and maybe do what we want. No, we serve a God who created us, who is real, who gives us breath, and who we know is in control of what's happening in our life, even if, man, it's hard to understand what that looks like today. I hope that can be an encouragement to you today. I hope you have a great Tuesday, and we will talk to you again soon.